Minimal drum and bass is about to take over in 2024. I'm going to show you 4 essential bass sounds so you can be on top of this genre before it's trending all over. And I'm going to be using my favorite synth to date, Minimal Audio's Current. They have a variety of pricing options to fit your needs, and you can learn more down in the links below. Alright, without further ado, let's dive in. Alright, so here's the minimal drum and bass track I worked on. This track was inspired by Skeptical and Alex Perez, so shouts out to the leaders of this sound. First off, the drums is from the Acid Lab sample pack. Some really awesome breaks in this pack. You can learn more in the links below. Now listen carefully to the bass line. We have the bottom harmonic, which is the sub bass. On top of the sub bass, we have a sequence of mid basses consisting of donks, WUBS, and growl sounds. These are the top sounds, and the key is to use a number of different mid basses that play in sequence to each other. It's almost like writing a sentence by using a combination of these mid bass sounds. So here are the mid basses on their own. Notice they're playing one after the other, like a sentence or a call and response. Let's start with the warm, pulsating sub bass. The key here is not to be overly melodic or dramatic. With minimal drum and bass, it's all about the subtleties. It's about having restraint and selectiveness in terms of when those high and mid bass sounds punch in. It's a lot different from jump up, where it's all up in your face. Now, although a simple sub bass using a sine wave often will do, sometimes with minimal drum and bass, you want something a little more audible in the upper harmonics. This way, there's a little more character and movement in the bass. So that's where we're going to start with a square wave, which is a lot more fuller sounding as opposed to a sine wave. And then using unison mode, we're going to multiply the voices to make it sound thick and wide. I like having 3, it just does the job. Then you want to detune each voice. That just makes it sound wider. Now let's pop into their effects engine here. Now what I love about Current's effects section is you have access to all their effects plugins built into Current, which is quite crazy. And so what's really cool is you can choose any effect in this matrix. For example, you can have 3 stages of distortion if you want it, or multiple layers or filters. So you're not just limited to one instance of each effect. Now I'm going to apply the hybrid filter here. They have a number of different filters in this section. I love using the phaser filters. It just adds a really cool character to the sound. We want that kind of nasally sound. Now let's pop back into the engine, and this time we're going to employ the low pass filter on the corner here. And we're going to shave off the top end. So now we only have that sub bass. Then we're going to be using an LFO at the bottom here to modulate the cutoff to get that WUBS sound. Now notice my rate is quite slow, 1/2. We just want that slower rhythm for minimal drum and bass, but feel free to use whatever rate you'd like. Notice my resonance is up to make it sound juicier. Now, because we're using unison mode, the juxtaposition of multiple waveforms will cause the sub bass to phase in and out. To remedy this, go back to the effects section and we're going to employ an EQ, and we're taking all the bottom end out of this bass. Now luckily, Current has an awesome sub bass engine. If you click on the tab over here, they have a dedicated engine for subs. You just turn it on. Just make sure direct out is on so that it passes and skips through the effects section. So we're getting pure sub bass. Look here, I love the partial section. You can add upper harmonics to the sub bass. You can even add an attack using the knock and decay parameters. Really handy for sub basses. However, we're going to keep it simple for this bass, just the root harmonic. And sounding nice and fat. Finally, let's go back into the effects section. I'm going to add a bit of reverb to the top bass. Remember, we're removing all the bottom end, so adding some reverb on the top end of the bass is okay here. Just adjust the taste. I'm around just 10%. Just gives it more that dungeon vibe, which is akin to minimal drum and bass. Finally, just make sure your bass is set to mono mode, so only one note can ever be played at the time. And I'm setting my glide to around 190 to 200 milliseconds to get that kind of really wonky, wobbly kind of sound with the sub bass. Now, the pattern here is a very simple pattern. I'm just playing really 3 notes, going from one note to an adjacent note. Very common in minimal drum and bass. And I'm joining the notes, because since this is a mono synth, joining it will cause it to glide up to the next note. Notice how wonky that sounds. Let's hear it with the drums. And by the way, if you're interested in Current, remember to check the links down below. They have a 30-day free trial, and they offer a diverse range of pricing options tailored to fit everyone's needs. Alright, now let's work on the mid basses. And remember, it's all about selecting a number of different mid bass sounds to create kind of like a sentence or call and response sequence. So let's work on the first mid bass sound, which is the donk. Donk bass sounds have this characteristic of this donk donk or gunk gunk percussive vibe to it. That's thanks to its quick attack. So this time we're using a non-repeating envelope over here with a shape like this. Essentially, we have this really short instrument with a quick attack like this. That's what creates that percussiveness of the donk. Now I'm using a square wave once again. I'm modulating the volume with this envelope here, so it goes from high volume to no volume for that quick and short stab. Now, depending on your taste and how you want your donks to sound, you can make it a little more convex. I like it nice and full like that. Now, to make the donk sound a little more percussive, we want more high frequencies, which we're going to then filter out. So we're going to be employing FM synthesis here. Essentially, FM synthesis distorts the shape of your waveform with another waveform on oscillator B. So for oscillator B, we're going to be using a Fuller wavetable. Now check out the stream tab on Current here. Essentially, this gives you access to Minimal Audio's cloud library with hundreds of presets, wavetables, and sounds, and it's constantly updating and growing. We're going to go into wavetables here. Let's check out what they have. We're going to use this brute PWM here and load it on the oscillator B, and this is how it sounds. Now let's increase the unison mode to 3 on each voice. Sounding nice and fat. Now we're going to bring down the level of oscillator B so it's inaudible. Essentially, oscillator B is only used to manipulate the shape of oscillator A using FM synthesis. Now look over to the right here, we have a dedicated FM synthesis section here. And under oscillator A, we're going to choose oscillator B to manipulate oscillator A. And then increase the mount knob here. Higher values will have richer timbre. Now if we increase the pitch of oscillator B, this will change the tonality of oscillator A. We're going to change octave to 2. And a semitone to 7. The reason that works is that 7 semitones is harmonically in sync with the root note. Now we're going to bring the mount just down here. We just need a bit of FM synthesis. And notice that the envelope here is mapped to the mount here to give more of an attack at the tip of the LFO. Now we're going to go back into the filter section and turn on the low pass filter to shave off all of that bottom end. We only want those high frequencies at the very tip of that gonk sound. Like that. Now adjust the amount to taste. I like it like there. Now let's go back into the effects section. I'm going to be adding distortion. Remember, in current, you have access to all of Minimal Audio's effects. And this is great because my favorite effects unit, Rift, is here. Now, in distorting this bass sound, I'm also modulating the drive amount using the same LFO shape. Again, giving more pronunciation at the tip of that donk. Now I'm going to employ their multi-compressor, which I love because you have multiple bands, more than 3, up to 6, which is quite crazy. But we only need 3 here just to accentuate the sound of this donk sound. And then let's employ some EQ, remove the bottom end. And for taste, you can add a second stage of Rift. And perhaps add a bit of reverb here. That sounds nice and dandy. Now remember, these are mid basses. We already have a sub bass occupying the bottom. That's why we're going to be removing the bottom or bass frequencies from all these mid basses. Now for this donk bass, I just have it playing one short note like this. And let's hear it with the drums. Sounding sick. Alright, let's move on to the WUBS basses, which is this sound here. Essentially, the process of making this WUBS bass is the same as a donk bass. The only difference between these two sounds is the shape of the envelope. So notice the shape of our envelope here wubs up, which is why we call it a WUBS bass. That's how you get that kind of W sound, wubs up. All the other parameters or settings are pretty much the same. However, to make this preset sound a little bit different from our donk bass, we can change some settings. For example, I've changed the shape of the wavetables here. So instead of this fatter sound like this, I have this kind of sine wave here. And then I'm increasing the octave to 3 for oscillator B. So you get a completely different tone for this WUBS bass. Now under the effects section, it's pretty much the same. I have distortion. I'm removing the bottom end. This time I'm not employing as many effects. I'm just keeping it a little more minimal. But it's really up to you and your taste and how you want your WUBS bass to sound. The only difference here is I'm employing the ripple phaser effect here, which makes the WUBS sound a little more moist, because I know how you like it when it gets moist. And with the pattern of this WUBS bass, I'm just playing 3 notes consecutively. And I'm using a pitch wheel bend to add a wonkiness to the sound. And here it is together with the donk and WUBS bass. Alright, let's move to the growly sound. So for growl sounds, I want a longer note. It almost plays like a Reese. So this time I'm employing a repeating LFO as opposed to a single cycle envelope. And pretty much the process of creating this sound is similar to the other sounds. This time I'm choosing the contour wavetable, which is a bit more fatter compared to the other square table that we used earlier. Again, unison mode is 3. I'm using FM synthesis to add timbre to the sound. Now I'm using the filter, but this time the filter opens up higher. Just makes it sound a little more wet once again. And remember, the LFO is also modulating the volume of oscillator A. There's no volume in oscillator B. It's only used to manipulate the shape of oscillator A. And then finally, we have the effects section. Here's the sound without effects. Here's Rift, compressor, take out the bottom end. And this time I'm employing the chorus to make the sound a bit fatter and add some movement to the sound. And remember, just like the sub bass, this is also a mono synth, so mono is enabled, so only one note is played at the same time. And my glide is set to 190 milliseconds. I also have legato enabled, which means subsequent notes will follow where the last note left off in terms of the LFO phase. And then with the growl, I'm playing 3 notes like this. Remember, the glide and legato is connecting these notes together. Here's the tip. If you color each clip differently, then you select all 3 clips and go into the MIDI view, just hit Shift Tab. You can see all 3 sounds together and color coded. This just makes it easier to edit call and response basses with different bass sounds. For example, I might want to add an additional wub note here and maybe another donk sound here. Alright, now that I have all our bass sounds, let's add one more sound to this sequence. So I have this droney atmospheric, which is sidechained to the kick. With minimal drum and bass, simple drony sounds playing on the background will make a huge difference. Alright, now that we have everything, let's hear the track in full. And that's sounding dirty. Alright, hope you enjoyed watching me create minimal drum and bass. Remember, the key concepts here is to have a pulsating sub bass, which is rhythmic and not too elaborate or dramatic, and then having a little more restraint with those mid and high bass sounds. It's all about having a sequence of different bass sounds which play one after the other, like call and response. It's like writing a sentence with wub basses. Once again, if you want to learn more about Minimal Audio's current, you can find out more in the links below. If you want to support my channel, I have a number of preset packs, sample packs, and Ableton kits to help you along your journey. You can learn more about those down in the links below. Finally, my name is Stranger. If you want to learn more about producing dance music and drum and bass, then this channel is for you. Help me reach 100K by hitting the subscribe button. If you want to learn how to arrange drum and bass from top to bottom, check this video up here. If you want to learn how to create more drum and bass sounds, check this playlist up here. Alright, that's pretty much it for today, guys. Thanks for watching, keep practicing, I'll see you at the next video. Peace.